Men, let me ask you something personal. When was the last time you thought about whether your private habits at night were actually helping or hurting you? Now, I'm not talking about what pills you take or what time you go to bed, but something far more natural, and for many of us, a little bit private. Yes, I'm talking about masturbation, your prostate, and how all of this ties into the quality of your sleep. For men over 70, these are not just idle curiosities. They can have a real impact on your health, your energy, and even your peace of mind. I once had a patient, let's call him Richard, who came to see me after his wife passed away. He was in his early 70s, and he confessed something many men never bring up with their doctors. He said, "Doc, I don't know if what I'm doing at night is hurting me or helping me. Some nights I can't sleep unless I take care of myself, but other times I wonder if it's making me weaker." Richard's honesty struck me because I knew there were thousands of men just like him, quietly wondering the same thing, but too embarrassed to ask. My name is Dr. Nolan Easton, and I've spent more than 30 years working in men's health, especially with senior men navigating changes in their bodies, their intimacy, and their energy. And in today's video, Men 70 plus, masturbation, prostate, and sleep, what's healthy? I want to walk you through this exact topic with warmth and clarity, the way I would if you were sitting right here in my office. Now first, let's be very clear. At age 70, your body doesn't behave like it did when you were 20. Or even 50. Hormones shift, circulation changes, and sleep itself becomes more fragile. What used to be an easy 8 hours might now be broken into shorter chunks. Add in the natural worries of life, aches, losses, or the stress of simply aging, and it's no wonder so many men start to wonder if their habits are helping or harming. With Richard, I began by asking him one simple question. How did he feel afterward? If he used masturbation as a way to relax and he drifted into sleep, that was one kind of outcome. But if he woke up feeling drained, restless, or even guilty, that was another. You see, the body and the mind are connected in ways we often underestimate, especially when it comes to sexuality and sleep. From a purely medical standpoint, occasional release, whether through intimacy with a partner or through masturbation, can actually be healthy for the prostate. Regular emptying of the gland helps clear fluids, supports circulation, and in many studies has been linked with a lower risk of prostate issues as men age. But here's the key: frequency and context matter. Just because something is beneficial in moderation doesn't mean more is always better. Some men, especially living alone, begin to rely on it nightly as a crutch for falling asleep. For a while, that might work, but over time, it can disrupt your natural sleep cycles, especially if your body becomes conditioned to expect stimulation before rest. I explained this to Richard with a comparison he understood well. Too much of a good thing can turn into a dependency, like taking a sleep aid every night instead of letting your body relearn how to rest naturally. Another layer here is energy. Many men notice that the morning after, they don't feel quite as strong. That's not because the act itself drains vitality in the mystical sense, but because hormones like prolactin rise after orgasm, and that can contribute to drowsiness or sluggishness if it happens too often. Over time, this can feed into fatigue during the day, which in turn makes nighttime sleep even more difficult. It's a cycle many don't recognize. That's why this conversation matters, because it's not about shame or guilt, but about balance. When you understand what's happening in your body, you can make better choices for your prostate, your sleep, and your overall health. Richard found that when he limited his habit to a few times a week instead of nightly, he slept more soundly, had more energy in the morning, and felt less anxious about whether he was doing something wrong. Now let me pause here and ask you something. Do you ever feel like your nighttime habits are affecting the way you sleep or how energetic you feel the next day? If you do, I want you to type a simple yes in the comments. If not, just say no. I read your responses personally, and your answers help me guide future videos so I can give you exactly the advice you need most. And while you're down there, don't forget to tap that like button, subscribe to this channel, and click the bell icon so you never miss a conversation like this. As Richard continued his journey, something else became clear. When he gave himself permission to treat his body with care rather than judgment, his confidence grew. Instead of wondering if he was doing harm, he saw his habits as part of a bigger picture of men's health. Exercise, nutrition, rest, and intimacy, all woven together. That's what I want for you too. Because the truth is, masturbation at age 70 isn't good or bad in itself. It's the balance that matters. It can support your prostate health. It can even help you fall asleep. But if it becomes the only tool you use, or if you notice it leaves you drained, that's a sign to step back and adjust. And when you do, you may find that not only does your sleep improve, but that you carry yourself through the day with more strength and peace of mind. Richard once told me months later, "Doc, I don't feel like I'm fighting myself anymore. I feel like I'm living with my body instead of against it." That's the power of understanding, and it's what I want every man who watches this video to experience.
When Richard and I first started talking about his habits, I could see the unease on his face. This was a man who had lived through wars, raised a family, and built a career. Yet here he was, at 72 years old, nervous to ask his doctor if something as natural as masturbation was harmful. That tells you how deep the silence around men's sexual health really runs. And that silence is what causes so much confusion. The truth is, many men past 70 quietly struggle with these questions. They may have prostate issues, difficulty sleeping, or declining energy, and they wonder if their private behaviors are to blame. They rarely talk about it with their buddies, and often even their partners are left in the dark. That's why conversations like this are so important, because shining light on what's healthy and what isn't gives men back their confidence and peace of mind. One of the first things I explained to Richard was how the prostate works at this stage of life. The prostate is a small gland, about the size of a walnut, that sits just below the bladder. Over the years, it goes through changes, and for many men, it enlarges. That's what leads to those frustrating symptoms: frequent trips to the bathroom at night, difficulty starting the stream, or feeling like the bladder never fully empties. You know exactly what I mean if you've had to get up 3 or 4 times after midnight. Now here's where masturbation ties in. When a man ejaculates, the prostate releases fluids that have built up. This natural clearing process helps reduce congestion in the gland. In plain language, it gives the prostate a bit of relief. That's why some medical research has suggested that regular release, whether with a partner or solo, may lower the risk of prostate trouble and, in some studies, even reduce the risk of prostate cancer. So, for men over 70, the act itself is not harmful. In fact, it may provide a protective benefit. But, and this is where I want you to listen closely, just because something has benefits doesn't mean it's always right for you in every circumstance. Richard, for example, was leaning on it too heavily to help him fall asleep. It became less about enjoyment and more about necessity. That shift is important because when any behavior turns into a nightly requirement, it can interfere with the body's natural rhythms. Instead of learning to relax and settle down for sleep on his own, Richard was training his mind to associate rest only with sexual release. Imagine if you needed a glass of whiskey every night before bed. At first, it might help you drift off, but over time, it could disrupt your sleep quality and affect your health in ways you never intended. The same can happen with relying on masturbation as a nightly sleep aid. It's not that the act itself is bad, but that dependency can keep your body from finding its own natural balance. I asked Richard to experiment, try a few nights without it, and see how his sleep felt. At first, he struggled. He lay awake longer than usual, restless, staring at the ceiling. But after about a week, something surprising happened. He began falling asleep more naturally, with fewer interruptions. And when he did choose to pleasure himself, he noticed it felt more satisfying, almost like his body was thanking him for the break. Another key aspect we discussed was energy. At 70, every ounce of vitality counts. Many men tell me they feel weaker or more sluggish after climaxing, and that can be confusing. Here's why it happens. During orgasm, your body releases several hormones, including prolactin. This hormone is tied to relaxation and drowsiness, which can help with sleep. But if it happens too often, it can leave you feeling drained the next day. Think of it like draining a battery just a little too much each night. It may not be obvious at first, but over time, it adds up. That doesn't mean men should avoid it altogether. Far from it. What it means is being mindful of balance. If you're waking up groggy or noticing dips in your energy, it may be worth stepping back to see if your nighttime habits are part of the picture. What I loved most about Richard's journey was how it shifted his perspective. Instead of seeing his desires as something to hide, he began seeing them as signals from his body, guides to help him understand what he needed. Some nights, intimacy with himself was restorative. Other nights, he realized a cup of chamomile tea, a short walk before bed, or even some gentle reading was enough to ease him into rest. He discovered that his sexuality wasn't just about release, it was about listening to his body's cues. And this is the point I want you to take to heart. At 70 and beyond, your health is not about rigid rules, but about balance. Your prostate benefits from regular release. Your mind benefits from not being overly dependent. And your energy—
When I think back to Richard's story, what stands out isn't just the physical changes he experienced, but the emotional shift. He walked into my office worried, carrying the weight of shame, as if at his age he wasn't supposed to think about sex or pleasure anymore. By the time we finished working together, that shame was gone. He carried himself differently. His shoulders were straighter, his eyes brighter. He felt like a man who had reclaimed a part of himself. That's what I want to focus on now, the emotional and mental side of this topic, because for men over 70, the mind is just as important as the body when it comes to health. You see, when it comes to masturbation, prostate health, and sleep, we often talk about the physical mechanics, hormones, circulation, and sleep cycles. But there's another layer we can't ignore: how these things make you feel about yourself. I've met many men in their 70s who quietly carry guilt around their sexuality. They were raised in times when the subject was considered shameful, something you never spoke about. That kind of upbringing leaves a deep mark. So even today, when science clearly tells us that masturbation can support prostate health and even aid relaxation, some men still wrestle with a voice inside that says, "This is wrong. I shouldn't be doing this at my age." Richard admitted that he sometimes felt dirty afterward, like he had done something inappropriate. But when we broke it down together, he realized that this negative self-talk was robbing him of peace. The truth is, your sexuality doesn't disappear at 70. It simply evolves. Just as you adapt to new routines for exercise, diet, and rest, you also adapt in how you experience pleasure and intimacy. This matters for sleep more than you might think. Anxiety and guilt are some of the biggest obstacles to rest. If you climb into bed worried about whether your habits are hurting you or ashamed of what your body desires, your mind stays restless. You may find yourself tossing and turning, replaying thoughts, and waking up in the middle of the night. But when you reframe your thinking, when you see masturbation not as something shameful, but as one of many tools to care for your health, you lower that mental burden. And when the mind is at peace, the body follows into rest. Another layer here is connection.
Many older men feel a loss of intimacy, especially after losing a spouse or when a partner faces health challenges of their own. The absence of closeness can leave a void, and masturbation becomes not just about physical release, but about maintaining a sense of connection with one's own body. That's not only natural, but healthy. It reminds you that you are still a living, feeling man with needs and vitality. And when you embrace that truth, it often brings comfort that translates into better sleep. Richard shared that when he changed his perspective, his confidence in other areas of life improved too. He no longer saw himself. When Richard returned for his final follow-up with me, he had a quiet smile on his face. He said, "Doc, I never thought at 72 years old I'd still be learning new things about myself. But this whole journey has given me peace. I sleep better, I feel better, and I don't carry around that nagging guilt anymore." That moment stayed with me because it captured exactly what I want every man watching this to know. You're never too old to find balance, health, and confidence. So let's bring all of this together. We've talked about how masturbation, prostate health, and sleep are connected, especially for men over 70. We've looked at how your habits can support or interfere with rest, how the prostate benefits from regular but moderate release, and how your mental state, whether filled with guilt or filled with acceptance, can change everything. Now here's the most important takeaway. Masturbation at your age is neither good nor bad in itself. It's about how you use it. In moderation, it can keep your prostate clearer, reduce congestion, and even help you fall asleep. But if it becomes something you rely on every single night just to drift off, it can condition your body to depend on it, and that can interfere with natural sleep cycles. The key is balance, listening to your body, respecting your limits, and not letting guilt or shame cloud your judgment. Richard's story is proof that making small adjustments can bring big rewards. Once he shifted from nightly reliance to a more balanced rhythm, he slept more soundly, had more energy during the day, and regained his confidence as a man. He didn't lose his sexuality. In fact, he enjoyed it more because it became a choice rather than a compulsion. And that's the freedom I want for you too. There's another gift in this journey: self-acceptance. Too many men over 70 believe their sexuality should fade away, that their desires are something to be embarrassed about. But that couldn't be further from the truth. Sexuality evolves, yes, but it doesn't vanish. It's part of your humanity, your vitality, and your connection with yourself. Embracing that truth can lift a heavy burden off your shoulders and replace it with peace. As a doctor who has spent more than 30 years caring for men in their senior years, I can tell you this with certainty. When you understand your body and listen to its signals, you'll not only improve your prostate and sleep, you'll improve your quality of life. You'll walk taller, feel lighter, and rediscover the energy and calm that make your days brighter. Before we close, I want to ask you to join in this conversation. If you've ever wondered about this topic, or if what I've shared today makes sense to you, type yes in the comments. If not, type no. I personally read your responses, and they help me create better advice that speaks directly to your needs. And don't forget, click like, hit subscribe, and tap the bell so you'll always know when new videos are here for you. Your support means more than you know, and it helps me reach other men who are quietly carrying the same questions. As Richard walked out of my office that day, he said something I'll never forget. "Doc, I feel like I've stopped fighting against myself. Now I'm living with myself." That's exactly the transformation I hope you take from this. Not to give up, not to deny, but to live in harmony with your body, your mind, and your needs. So, my final message to you is this. Men over 70, masturbation, prostate health, and sleep are all connected. Treat your habits with balance, treat yourself with kindness, and remember, you are not broken, you are not too old, and you are not alone.
you're still a man with vitality, deserving of health, rest, and peace. And when you honor that, you'll find that even in your 70s, you can sleep deeply, live fully, and carry yourself with strength and dignity. This is Dr. Nolan Easton, wishing you good health, restful nights, and confidence in who you are. Take care of yourself, and I'll see you in the next video.